Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our latest webinar. My name is Adam Dover. I'm the Senior Trade and Segment Marketing Manager here at Sony Europe, and I'm joined today by our co-star Mark Stamborough, who's our Digital Signage Business Development Manager for the UK and Ireland. And in today's webinar, we're going to be talking a bit more about the changing face of in-store retail. As you know, retail, among every other sector, is facing kind of unprecedented change at the moment, and that landscape is changing drastically. And retailers are having to really look at how they're utilising their retail spaces to make sure that they can maximise that in-store experience, which has typically been kind of dominated by an online retail world. And recently we've done a piece of research where we have surveyed over 1,000 respondents from across the UK and Europe to get a bit more information and delve into the details of those retail trends from both an AV procurement perspective, but also a consumer buying perspective, to really try and better understand how retailers are operating now, what the strategies are, and how we can optimize technology in those spaces to create those experiential retail experiences. So let's get into the good stuff. So, I mean, Mark, retail is really faced kind of an unprecedented change over the last few years, very much as a result of COVID, with that retail landscape changing from very much an in-store model to more of an online model. And I guess that's been quite a challenge for retailers to really adjust their strategies to really account for that. So, I mean, what did that look like from our research?
Well, we found in our research that online is still very much important. It's still experiencing high usage. Especially with the cost of living crisis that we're going through at the moment. People are looking for better deals or perhaps additional options when looking at their purchases. But we have also found that in our survey that the high street is still very, very important to consumers, and not necessarily seeing a decline in some areas that we may be seeing in other areas. We found that over half of the retailers surveyed have not closed a single brick and mortar shop in the past 12 months. And also 37% of the consumers that we surveyed said they would choose in-store shopping for general browsing instead of just online.
So, I mean, that actually sounds quite positive for kind of in-store retail. And I know there's been a few articles recently about retail in general across the BBC saying there were going to be kind of challenging times, especially for in-store. But I think then we look at the recent campaigns by some retailers like John Lewis, right? Their Christmas advert is very much about that in-store experience.
Yeah, very much so. And as we've mentioned, it's still very important, and they are looking to get people through the doors again. And it's about attracting those customers and using AV, using digital signage as a catalyst to get those people through the doors.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, AV plays a big part in that in terms of the experiential value that it can bring to those experiences, whether that's, across the board for signage or just getting people into those stores. But I mean, so how can retailers really look to kind of capitalize on that browsing behavior and bring people back into store?
Well, by using digital signage, by using AV, attracting those customers through the door, and nearly a quarter of the consumers that we spoke to said they would like the buy online but return in store option when purchasing. And this is also going to help with sort of the green and the eco credentials there as well, because there's less packaging, less shipping. And by using AV, you can help put different adverts up within the store. We can put signposting on, special offers. So there's a whole wide range of different options that can be used to help make that whole experience so much better for the consumers.
Yeah. One interesting one on the retail side of things, and something that's developed with us over the last year or so as well, is actually the Stella McCartney case, because, I mean, as you know, they reached out to us in early January, February time to support with them for their kind of autumn-winter fashion show over in Paris. And one of the things that they were quite keen on, as you said earlier, was not only working with a sustainable brand to make sure that it aligned with their brand and their objectives, but also the technology side of things. It was quite challenging because it took place in the Parc André Citroën. So as you can see from the background slide, it was a very challenging environment for light. And the installation was very scattered, and they wanted it to be quite raw and exposed to match that. So we used our BZ40L series there. So those kind of flagship displays that we have with that deep black non-glare, and that turned out phenomenally, but since then we've also then done the retail project with them, right?
Yeah, correct. So they obviously loved what Sony was able to provide at the Paris Fashion Week, and they wanted to recreate that in their shop windows. So they took 6 screens and they've positioned them similar to what we have here, some in landscape, some in portrait, and they've taken the BZ40L again. And being used in a shop window, you've obviously got glare coming from the sun, but by using the deep black non-glare technology and the 47% haze, we're able to alleviate any of the reflections that come onto the screens themselves, and they look great in that shop window.
Yeah, because it is, like you said, that challenging, that storefront kind of display, as we said, is that brightness is always going to be a challenge, but with that deep black non-glare and that viewing angle, it's really made it quite an impressive installation, and that was a flagship store global project.
Yes, correct. So they first of all installed in the old Bond Street store, which is their flagship store here in London, and they are rolling that out across Europe and the Americas as well at the moment.
Yes, that's a great one for showcasing that BZ40L and that technology there.
It's perfect, and it obviously helps them bring the online and the in-store merge that experience, as we've mentioned previously as well, having the same content running across both online and in-store.
And I think over the years we've also seen, if we look back to 2018, there was an article about how retailers were using other ways of attracting, not only get people in store, but to keep them there and kind of maintain their attention. So that was a case of, if you look at Waterstones or Next, and they've started to put coffee shops actually within their retail spaces so that they can get their customers there. And do you think that's a continuing trend, or are they looking to do it other ways now? And of course, with that element, there's a monetization piece about it, right?
Yeah, very much so. We're seeing, like you said, certain retailers putting coffee shops, cafes into their stores, but it's also a case of other retailers are looking at other ways of monetizing. So that may be, if they're a supermarket or a department store, charging brands to have their adverts being played at certain times. And by using the AV, by using the digital signage in those stores, they can generate that revenue from those particular advertisements from the different brands.
Yeah, and I guess in a sense that also gives the retailers an opportunity to go out to the brands to enhance their offering in store, whether there's, again, seasonal offers on or anything.
Exactly, yes, and it's something we're seeing more and more of. You walk into any supermarket these days and there will be some sort of digital signage there advertising a certain product.
Yeah, and when you talk about digital signage, are we talking just about LFD in terms of displays, screens, or we're looking at kind of the larger LED piece as well?
It's everything, yeah. So we're looking at the perhaps end of aisle LFDs, but also maybe the larger LEDs, sometimes the smaller LEDs as well. So yeah, it covers everything.
Yeah, and I think, AV in that element covers a very broad kind of spectrum. It's not just about the display technology, it's kind of the audio piece as well. And we've got, many of our customers that we work with do complete experiential packages to give that. But I was also watching something recently on Aldi and their kind of strategy for that, and having the e-ink price tags, right?
Yes. So again, it's coming down to using the technology to enhance the experience for the consumers and making the best use of all the technologies that are there.
Yeah, and I guess it's also, who's the onus on in terms of how to keep up with those trends? Is that very much the retailer? Is that the AV industry, in a sense of we should be pushing more and coming more with more ideas about how technology can be utilized? Or
I think it's on the AV industry to have that technology available, but it's also about making it work for the retailers as well. There's having all the technology there, it needs to be fit for purpose, fit into the landscape that they've got, making it work, so that then it's down to the retailers to take up what the AV industry can actually offer to them.
Yeah, so it's very much like a complementary piece, really. That goes down that chain, and there's various different elements that can help out. But just talking about kind of that digital signage piece, and especially when it comes to kind of the management, because ultimately in store you're not just going to have one or two screens. It's going to be, there's been multiple around, but also they're going to be showing maybe different content. So when it comes to the signage in that CMS point of view, how is that kind of a benefit using kind of the latest AV?
Yeah. So there's many different CMS partners around that Sony work with as well, and each one of those has their own way of getting the different adverts, the different content to the screens. And by utilising the CMS partners to their full potential, you can run different adverts at perhaps different times. You could increase the frequency of certain adverts. And by putting those up, it may be a case of you want to target certain adverts at certain times, or target them in certain places as well. You're not restricted to having the same content on every screen at the same time. You can pick and choose where you would like that content, so you're getting the right message to the right screen at the right time.
So different kind of messaging for different places across the country, or even, you know, different locations on a European level, global level even, right?
Yeah, very much so. And it's about having that complete control as well. And with the CMS partners, you have that control to say where that particular advert is going to be targeted to at that particular time.
Yeah, and I guess from a marketing perspective, looking at that in terms of a campaign piece, the ability to deploy content, I mean, instantly, right, is hugely beneficial, because if there's any very last minute campaigns that come up that you want to communicate, it's still in many places there's the kind of the typical traditional print advertising which you've done, but that would take a few days at least to get assets created and then printed and distributed, right? So the beauty of digital signage means it can be done instantly.
Instantly, yes, correct. So we see it, especially the change in weather that we have here in the UK. One minute in the middle of summer, we've got rain pouring down, and then the next day it's beautiful sunshine. Retailers could very quickly put advertisement up around ice creams. And they would then obviously, whether they've got special offers or whether they've got excess stock, they could target particular brands, particular lines that they want to be pushing. And this can all be done, as you said, instantaneously. And as the weather changes, they can just pop those different adverts up.
So are we seeing, do you think, an increased demand for the likes of screens and other kind of digital signage and other technology in store? Is it moving to that model, kind of more digital model now?
Yes, and I think it's, as you've mentioned, being able to change the content almost instantly, and be able to tailor it as well to that particular location. We're seeing a lot more retailers going down that route now, and it's something, as we mentioned previously, they're looking to entice those customers back in, and once they're in, keep them in the store as well, or direct them to the right products, the products they want to push, or the products that they think will benefit them best.
Do you see any differences across the kind of the different types of retail as well, whether it's, FMCG and supermarkets compared to clothing or hardware, for example?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at, say, the clothing stores, they tend to have their lines that they've got ready for that particular season. So they'll have all their adverts ready, they'll play those out, whether it's for autumn, winter, summer. Whereas when you look at the supermarkets, it's more around the brands that they want to push perhaps that particular week or that particular day even. So while they're all putting the large screens up in the stores, it's more around the content and how it's being used that the difference is.
Yeah, and in terms of the technology, is there do you see more of a preference, whether it's actually what type of technology is used, whether it's a screen or a projector, whether that's LED or a flat panel, or is it kind of something different in terms of the screen sizes as well? Do they need huge canvases or just kind of multiple NVIDIA wall kind of installations? It
varies depending on the size of the stores, the retailers that we're working with. A lot of the time, a 55-inch mounted in portrait works incredibly well for most stores. Some stores would want the much larger canvases, up to the 98s, or sometimes looking at the larger LEDs or even projectors in windows as well. So lots of different retailers have different requirements.
Yeah, and I think we've seen an installation recently which is quite an impressive one at the KEF showroom, where we've got that FHZ 85 projector or 90 projector, one of the two, but it's also duplicating the signage content within the store, but also outside, right? So there's more emerging technologies that are coming to really kind of enhance that the opportunities available, right?
Yeah, and where we work very well is that we've got the different technologies available. So we've obviously got the LED, we've got the large format displays, we've got the projectors. And when working with the CMS partners as well, we've got the ability to keep that content uniformed across the entire store, whether that's projector in a window or the large format displays in the store itself.
Yeah, and I mean, touching on that partnership piece, I mean, partnerships for us, as we know, is incredibly important, and unlike many other brands, I think we're kind of opening our doors now, right, and expanding the portfolio of partners that we're working with. But I mean, what are the key benefits? I mean, why would a partner want to work with Sony as such?
So, as you've mentioned, we've got a number of partners out there at the minute. I think the last count, we're up to 63 different CMS partners that we work with. And why the partners like working with Sony is we're very open. We work with them to make sure that our technologies are working together so that there isn't any problems. Especially when it comes to things like updates of the screens, we will let the partners know in advance. We won't just push an update out and in case there's any issues there on that side of things. We work closely with them, and it's about, as you've said, a partnership. We're not just there to push the screens, we're there to create those partnerships so that the retailers, the end users, get the best experience out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you take Bravia as an example, I mean, our latest range of professional Bravia, are there any kind of key features on those ones that are kind of perfect for those kind of retail applications, and what makes them good from the technology side of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So the latest lineup, our BZ40L and our BZ53L, which is the 98-inch version, they have our deep black non-glare technology, which has a 47% haze on it. And what that means in reality is that you don't get the glare on those screens. So very often in retail environments, they've either got large glass windows, they've got lots of strip lighting, lots of LED lights throughout the store. And with the deep black non-glare, it means that we don't have that glare on the screens. So the retailers can get the full content displayed on the screens without fear that consumers aren't going to see a certain part of that particular screen. But also, because we've got the deep black non-glare element, the deep black part of it means that the colors are very vivid, they stand out. We get the correct color representation as well, which if a retailer's spent or a brand has spent however many thousands of pounds designing a logo, designing a brand, they want that to come across as it's designed to come across. Yeah. Another point to consider is viewing angles as well, especially in a retail environment. If it's, say, a supermarket and you're walking down the aisle, if they've got screens on the end of the aisles, you're going to be looking at them from one particular angle. And with our deep black non-glare screens, we get the ability to keep the brightness and the colors from all viewing angles, whether that's, as I've mentioned, walking down the aisle, or if they're mounted up higher and you're beneath it, you still get that viewing angle, which delivers the colours and the brightness that you would expect.
Yeah, and I think brightness is a key one as well, right? Because I mean, typically, if you look at kind of storefront displays, they would have to be very bright. But does having the deep black non-glare and a wider viewing angle kind of help compensate if they're not quite as bright?
Yes, yeah, very much so. So as you said, traditionally you'd expect very high brightness for window screens, but we've been putting a lot of the BZ40L screens into shop windows now. Because we've got that 47% haze with the deep black non-glare, you don't need to have as high brightness to push through the reflections. So the 700 nits brightness that we have on the BZ40L is more than adequate for shop window displays.
So it's very much possible. It doesn't need to be typically those really, really bright kind of eye-melting screens.
Exactly, yeah. So it's also worth pointing out that we have a light sensor on all of our BZ range as well. So that means during daytime, it will be up at its brightest, but then at night, or as the light dims, the screen can actually dim the brightness as well. So it's not going to be that eye-watering brightness as you're walking past it. So it will also help with the eco rating on it as well. So the total cost of ownership, we're not using it at full brightness when it doesn't need to be. So it's not using as much electricity, better for the environment and sustainability.
So that's interesting actually when we talk about sustainability, because there was a question in our research, right, about the kind of importance of sustainability to retailers. And so what was the general consensus there with them on that point?
So for sustainability, 83% of retailers actually came back and said they wouldn't implement a technology based purely on sustainability reasons. However, to compete in that marketplace, they have realised that consumers are more focused on that. So it is something they are starting to look towards more and more. Interestingly, however, total cost of ownership is something that is very important to them, mainly to do with saving money on having the screens switched on. And by using our screens, we can actually provide significant cost savings over some of the competition.
Yeah, because it's quite interesting actually. In our corporate research piece that we did, sustainability was very much at the forefront, and I think organisations, especially corporates, I guess there's a bit more pressure on them from kind of a central point to do more and implement more sustainable practices. Do you think that's going to be something that's coming to retail? Because also with that, not only obviously as companies becoming with their more sustainable approaches, they're doing more for the environment, but there are also cost benefits, as you say, to doing so, right?
Yeah, very much so. And yes, I can see retailers moving more towards the same way that the corporate customers do as well, looking more at sustainability as a whole, not just for how they look to their consumers, but also their internal goals as well.
And how, from our perspective, we do quite a significant amount on that sustainability front to make sure that we are doing as much as we can there, but also very competitive in that space. So I mean, we've got some practices that we've got our special slogan, right?
Yeah, make it, move it, use it is Sony's slogan. So on the making side of it, we're now using Sorplast, which is a special Sony recycled plastic. We're using that in the backs of all of our BZ range of products. With the moving it side of things, we've actually reduced the packaging, the size of the packaging, the weight of the packaging. We've also done things like removing the feet from all of our BZ screens as well. So by reducing the carbon footprint when it comes to moving the screens, you can fit more screens on a lorry, so it's less trips are needed. And then with using it, we've also got the ability, as we've mentioned, using the light sensor to turn the screens down so they don't need to use as much electricity. Also, the technology that Sony's using behind the screens as well can help reduce that power consumption, giving an overall much more cost-effective solution.
Yes, that's interesting, because I guess the perception is that to be more sustainable, it's more expensive in terms of the procurement of product or the implementation of that, but that's maybe not necessarily the truth.
Not the case anymore. In the past, yes, but now Sony are obviously, that's their focus is on being sustainable, and they don't want to have the perception that it's more expensive doing so. And as a result of that, we're offering some very cost-effective pricing on our screens, but also, as mentioned before, the total cost of ownership can help bring that total cost down for everything.
Yeah, and I guess then also the added benefits like we talked about earlier about how technology in store can be utilised, whether that's from an advertising perspective so that retailers can then charge for the spaces that they have. So there's definitely different models that can be implemented to kind of really maximise that investment as well.
Yeah, exactly. Revenue generation is key, I think, these days. Especially with everything that's going on with regards to cost of living crisis as well. Brands are looking to get their messages across as well, and by using in-store advertising, and the retailers are actually have the ability to create revenue from that as well, it is something that people are moving more towards these days.
Yeah, and I guess that in reality then that's really quite an exciting time for retail, but also in-store retail as well, because there's plenty of options now to get customers back in store, create those experiences and really kind of drive that into the future in new ways.
Yeah, definitely. And by using the technology that's available there, it creates that much better experience for the consumers, bringing them back in store and giving them the best possible experience.
And so I guess lastly on that sustainability piece then, from a kind of a Sony perspective, we've got our Road to Zero.
Yes, yeah. So Sony's Road to Zero is By 2050, they want to have zero environmental impact in the production of their products. They're achieving this firstly by 2030, using only renewable energies in all of their offices and factories. By 2040, having zero greenhouse gas emissions. And by 2050, having zero virgin plastics being used in any of their products.
That's quite a significant kind of objective to set, right, for, with actual timelines in place for those activities. So we're really being held to account for that. So
yeah, and it's something Sony is very focused on from a group level, as well as from our professional displays and solutions department. It's something they are focused on, and they have the goals set in place.
And I guess also then from our perspective as an organisation, something that we want to bring to the market too, so that we can actually support other companies with their sustainability objectives.
Yes, yeah, and we're seeing it more and more. You've mentioned about the corporate sector, and we're seeing it more so in the retail sector now, where they want to be viewed as sustainable companies, and part of that is making sure they use sustainable suppliers with any of their projects that they work on.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, with consumers now being more conscious of that and actually expecting more from companies to do that, now is the time for them to really start looking into what they can do on that side of things to achieve those, right?
Yeah, and working with Sony, we can create partnerships, work with the retailers, and help promote these sustainable messages.
Yeah, which in turn, I guess, also helps in their revenue generation. So
exactly.
It's not so much as a chore, it's more of a must-do to help, but help with that growth perspective as well.
Yeah, very much.
So, I mean, we could ramble on for hours about these things, but I think that's pretty much all we've got time for today. So once again, thank you everyone for taking the time to join today's webinar. We hope you've found it insightful and interesting. There will be a short survey after the webinar, so if you wouldn't mind kindly just answering those 4 questions, that would be very much appreciated. And as we said earlier, please feel free to continue typing your messages in the chat function. We will get back to you as soon as we can. And if you'd like any more information from us at all, I mean, Mark and I would be always more than happy to have a discussion about anything retail, sustainability wise. So feel free to, again, reach out and we'll definitely be in touch. But until then, yeah, thanks again for watching. And for more information, visit pro.sony.
Thank you.